Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Eden Road podcast. Where on today's show, we're going over yet another home win, this time against Newcastle. Craig, in the Christmas spirit, how you doing, mate?
Feeling festive. Happy after another win, boys.
Another win indeed. Dan, how are we?
Yeah, all good. It feels like the best one so far. So onwards and upwards, hopefully.
Yeah, I think so, for sure, in terms of the calibre of opposition. Just before we get going, remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts on the Newcastle game. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, and also give us a follow on our socials at the Eden Road on Twitter, at Eden Road Pod on Instagram. Let's get straight into Tweet of the Week. This time, it's not really about the game itself. Obviously, when we win in the manner that we do, there's not a lot of meltdown, and the Tweet of the Week section is normally for that. I'm just going to pop it on screen for people who are watching on YouTube, but I'll read it out for the people that are listening on Spotify. So it's a quote retweet. It's Gaff, the Super Bees. The original tweet from Cosmo_NFFC, who's obviously a Forest fan. And he just said, imagine showing this to someone 5 years ago and it's the Premier League table, what it looked like at one point on Saturday when we were as high as 6th at one point, weren't we, on Saturday, or was it 7th?
6th.
Yeah, we were 6th at one point. But, Bournemouth the 10th, Fulham 9th, Brighton 8th, Brentford 7th, Villa 6th, and Forest 5th. It's more looking like a championship, kind of late 2000s championship table than a 2024 Premier League table. But there's been a lot of talk about sort of whether it's good for the Premier League if teams like Brentford and Brighton and Forest and Fulham are all kind of in the upper echelons of the division. But Gaff has quoted the tweet and said people don't want to admit it because they're nostalgia freaks, but the Prem is at an all-time high in terms of quality. Mid-table clubs, proper balling out, but you've got freaks. You've got freaks who want West Brom and Stoke to stink out this league again and park the bus with Steve Bruce ball. Fucking do one, he says as a sign-off. So very typical Gaff tweet that. But thoughts, boys? Because there has been a bit of debate over this. Whoever wants to go first, go for it. But I think Rory Jennings is definitely one that perpetuates this argument when he claims that Brentford and Brighton being in the Premier League full stop is a kind of horror, as opposed to some clubs like Leeds and Sheffield Wednesday who sit outside of the league.
If we're going to talk Rory Jennings, I'm going to have to take the hat off.
But there's definitely, I think most sane people would say that the league should be built on meritocracy and you should be where you are because of the points you have, not because of the size of club that you are. But thoughts, either of you, on this?
I think things change, right? So if things just stayed the same forever and ever, then what's the point? Like, do people just want the same teams in the Premier League all the time? That's not sport. That's not what should happen with a promotion and relegation system. It's almost like they'll be calling for something like the MLS in America, where everyone's just in the Premier League all the time up there. In terms of quality, I don't think you could deny it. It's probably at an all-time high. In terms of style of play, obviously most teams now look to be on the front foot, look to be positive, look to play nice football. I'd say Everton maybe the only exception, with maybe Sean Dyche has slightly a different philosophy. But 5-10 years ago, everyone was out there playing something similar to what Sean Dyche is trying to play now. And if you look at teams, like Bournemouth, for example, the manager that they can attract to their club now, Igor Thiago was obviously in a European semi-final with Club Brugge in the Conference League, I think, last year, but he's happy to come to Brentford just to be in that Premier League. So I think it's a place that players want to be. It's a place that top managers want to test themselves at. And the beauty of it is that there is quality in teams like all of those teams on that list. So Brentford, Brighton, Fulham. I mean, Brighton, especially in recent years, the way they've challenged some of the top teams and got such good results against them. And obviously we've done that in the past too. So yeah, I mean, if you earn the right to be there and you're playing well enough to be there, then obviously you should be there.
Craig, just to play like devil's advocate, for just to adopt Rory Jennings' argument, just for 1 second, not for too long, because I don't want to give him too much airtime. But would it be better for the Premier League if it was, for example, Leeds in 10th and Sheffield Wednesday in 9th and Sheffield United in 8th, than some of these big clubs like your West Broms and your Stokes, who are obviously a lot bigger than teams like Brentford and teams like Brighton, or at least were bigger in the past? Would it be better for the Premier League in terms of the product of it?
in terms of the product of it, no. But let's not beat around the bush here in terms of finances and numbers and things like that. I mean, a 40,000 seat stadium is going to bring in more money than 17,000 and 11,000 and 25,000. Do you know what I mean? So if you're talking Bramall Lane, Hillsborough, Elland Road, the Hawthorns, Britannia, whatever the bloody hell their stadium's called now, they're going to bring in more money than what we are able to bring in. Us, Fulham, Bournemouth, Brighton, they're going to be able to bring in more money than what we do. But you're not. Yes, obviously it is a money game, but realistically, people watch football for the entertainment factor of it, and they're dull. They are dull teams at the moment. I mean, yeah, all right, Leeds are doing well at the top of the Championship. Sunderland are doing well at the top of the Championship. Two big teams, but I would rather. This is obviously a biased opinion. I'd rather have us, Bournemouth, Brighton in the league, who play exciting attacking football. And don't sit back against teams like Burnley did when they got promoted. Sheffield United did when they got promoted. Norwich did. Everton do every bloody year. And that's dull football. But you're saying that you'd want them teams in there just because they were in there 10 years ago? No, that's rubbish.
No, you're absolutely. I think you're right as well. And even if they did come up, like the bit about the tweet that maybe I don't agree with is you want West Brom and Stoke to stink out the league with part of the bus Steve Bruce ball, because those clubs don't do that anymore. You're right, Dan, in that most teams, whether that be Premier League, Championship, League One or League Two nowadays, play the Pep Guardiola way. So it's like they'd be in there, but the fact that we're in there is because we've done it to a greater extent than they have done it in the past, which means that we deserve to be there. But yeah, I thought it was just maybe just an interesting way to kick the podcast off, because there has been, mainly due to Rory Jennings and the arguments that he puts forward.
And finances these days, just obviously in the Premier League, you get so much money just for being in the Premier League. So in terms of what you get for gate receipts and all that, I mean, I know a lot of clubs are putting their ticket prices up, but really it's just a drop in the ocean compared to what you get just for being there. And obviously the TV deals, which everyone's entitled to, and obviously you get a certain amount depending on where you finish. So I don't think it's as relevant maybe as it would have been 20, 30 years ago in terms of all the biggest teams with the biggest stadiums being in the Premier League.
For sure. And also just before we get on to the football, big shout out to Brentford for last week, the Gen 10 initiative, which means that all young fans can come to the Gtech for a tenner guaranteed in the same week that United hiked their season ticket prices up and their membership fees up, so that it means that kids could potentially be paying £66 to watch Man United get beat at home by Forest. I thought that was a really good initiative, and we could do a whole podcast. Go on.
People that try to turn their head on that, obviously there are fans out there that say, oh, you make tickets £10 just because you can't sell out your stadium. If clubs across the country did this, like Brentford are doing, you're paving the way for younger fans to get into football, rather than pricing those out, as you said, Mike, with Man United. If you're gonna try and criticize a club for reducing their ticket prices to help younger fans to grow up.
Yeah, I think as well, like, just to go off topic once more and talk about Man United, the fact that they've spent so much money on players in the last few years. They spent so much money on Dan Ashworth to sack him within sort of 5 months of him starting his job. They spent so much money to get Ruben Amorim out of his contract to Sporting and his assistants. And then there's, Jim Ratcliffe's coming. It's been a pretty piss poor start from Jim Ratcliffe at Man United. I'd really like, there was so much hype going into it. But if you look at his kind of CV and what they've done at Nice, it's not really coming as a surprise. But anyway, we're not a Man United podcast. We talk about Man United enough every day. So let's park that for now and get on to the game, boys. Initial thoughts, obviously big 4-2 win. I thought the first half and second half were night and day. Second half was fantastic. But yeah, initial thoughts, Dan. Start with you, mate.
Yeah, I thought second half was much better in terms of we created chances just like we did in the first half, but we didn't give anything really clear cut away. I thought first half, although we did create, it was far too open. I thought that if you're looking at just big chances that teams should have put away, it probably should have been 4-2, probably to Newcastle. at half time. So we got away with one a little bit there, and I suspect we won't always get away with it. The way we're playing, obviously we are. It's not luck, but we are taking a lot of our chances at the moment, and that's happening in a lot of our home games in particular. Obviously, the likes of Wissa, they're very good finishers. But again, you would expect maybe one day for some of those to not go in. But yeah, overall, it's really good. I mean, the league table is looking exciting. It was great to bounce back after the Villa game, and obviously Newcastle looked very good in their midweek game against Liverpool. So yeah, it was good to see, and the home form stands strong, and obviously there's more tests to come in the next month and a bit. I think in January there's a period where we face Arsenal, City, and Liverpool in a row at home. So we'll see how long it lasts for.
Craig, initial thoughts?
I know we're going to talk about it, but I thought in the first half we were giving away chances very easily, especially with the goals that they scored. The amount of time and space that we're still giving teams in our penalty area, and again, maybe I'm being maybe the pessimistic here, is we're giving good teams opportunities to score goals against us and hoping that they have a lull, in which Newcastle did. Let's be honest, they weren't fantastic, but they're easily the best team we faced at home this season, and we still put 4 past them. We just need to address our defensive frailties in the what's the word I'm looking for? In the case that our attacking players aren't scoring as well as they are scoring. But yeah, I'm very, very happy with that performance, and it was so entertaining to watch as well. So entertaining.
I think when I saw the lineup, and I've put it on screen for those watching on YouTube, but when I saw the line, and this corresponds to the lineup that Sky put out, so I'd be interested to see if you boys saw anything different. I was kind of looking for in possession and out of possession shape and how it would change, but I think Lewis Potter would kind of slot back in and turn into a 4 when we were defending. But it was really open in that first half, and sort of when I saw the lineup, it was like, wow, that is a super attacking lineup, considering he's managed to kind of crowbar Mbeumo, Wissa, Carvalho, Thiago, and Lewis Potter on as the team. Obviously, Lewis Potter's had a bit of a hybrid role this season, but it was weird to not see Damsgaard first of all. I think that viral video, that which should have been tweet of the week, which I've just remembered about, which we should definitely speak about, but the viral video where Thomas Frank and they've started to release the kind of team talks after the game, and he said something about Damsgaard and Janelt coming on as the finishers in the game, or maybe not Janelt because I think he was injured, but Damsgaard and Schade coming on as the finishers in the game. But it was a surprise to see Damsgaard drop from the lineup. It was a surprise to see, maybe not as much of a surprise, but Thiago get his full debut. Him and Wisps didn't play that far away from each other, which is something you wanted to see against Villa, which is something that we saw. So what I'm trying to say is when we saw the lineup, did you think, well, obviously there's going to be goals because it's Brentford at the Gtech, but when I saw the lineup, I was like, shit, there's probably going to be quite a few, and it's probably going to be quite up and down because they're quite a well-balanced team and we're quite good going forward. But yeah, Dan, what did you think when you saw the lineup?
Yes, well, I guess the first thing that we didn't expect, I mean, we expected that Norgard might be back, but we didn't expect that Janelt would then be gone. And obviously he's one of the players that is normally so reliable, always seems to be available. I think I was just telling my dad in the car, at least we got Janelt in there if Norgard's not fit, because he's always available. And then I checked the team and he's not in the team, which is in that sense, it was invaluable that we had Norgard back, because you could imagine what lineup would have been if Norgard wasn't there either. But yeah, so that was a bit of a shock. In terms of Damsgaard, I suspect obviously the Villa game was the first midweek Premier League game of the season, so it's probably a fitness issue. It's probably, looking back at Damsgaard's injury record in the past, I think Thomas Frank said he's building him to be robust. So I think maybe that one is just a little bit of rotation. I certainly don't think Damsgaard was dropped due to form or anything, and I expect him to be back in the next game. But it was a good opportunity for Carvalho. I know we've all said that Carvalho deserves more of a chance. I said in the last episode that perhaps Damsgaard could play a bit further back to accommodate Carvalho. I know not everyone liked that suggestion, and I wasn't suggesting that Damsgaard's better in a deeper role, because he's not better. You do lose something from him not being in that advanced role, but I think he can play those balls from a deeper space, and it will also allow Carvalho to be in the team in his favourite position. And Damsgaard has done that. I think in one of the home games this season. I can't remember which one it was, but he has done that this season before Jensen was fit, and I thought he could do that. But Thomas Frank went with Yarmoluik again on this occasion, and I thought he had a much better game. I've always thought he's good on the ball, and I think maybe having Norgard next to him might have just helped him a bit more. In terms of that formation, I didn't see it as Mbeumo being as a right wing back. I saw it more as a front three, kind of, but with Wissa up front with Thiago and Lewis Potter, just when we had the ball, just having free reign to go up and down, kind of like he had been doing when Damsgaard was kind of playing on the left but drifting in.
I saw it more. I saw it more as like a 4-2-4 potentially with Carvalho, Wissa, Thiago, and Mbeumo like as the kind of 4 up top, with Lewis Potter going up and down as normal, and then Yarmo.
That's his side, isn't it? There's no one else on that side. He's back there in defence. He's forward in attack, and I'd love to see his running stats because it must be quite high up in the last few games, because he does get up and down, and he does tend to get back, quite quickly when Newcastle get on the ball.
Yeah, I think Lewis Potter is definitely in for a shout for our player of the season so far. Hopefully he continues that form. But Craig, let's talk about the goals, because there were so many. Bryan's the first of the 6 that were scored on the day, but obviously we're going to talk about Bryan's performance in general, but it was a sign of things to come from him because he was lively all day. And these are the performances we get sometimes with Bryan. He goes maybe a few games without doing too much, and then you get one where he's the best player on the pitch, and I thought he was on Saturday.
He needed a goal as well, because I don't think he scored for a few games either, had he? Saying that, I can't even remember who.
He had one shot in the 5 games before that game, by the way. Only one shot.
Bloody hell. There you go. Yeah. So, if there was a player that needed a goal, it was probably him at that point. We was having the same conversation about Kevin Schade a few weeks back. But what a fantastic goal. But it kind of all started from the hard work from Fabio and Thiago in the middle, wasn't it? They win the ball back and it drops out to Norgard, who pings a lovely ball out to Bryan. And he's one of those players where his first touch, you don't really ever doubt it. You don't really ever doubt that first touch, because he brings it down brilliantly. And Lewis Hall's defensive work there, I will say, gave Bryan the upper hand straight away. Because as soon as Bryan got the ball, Lewis Hall was already arms behind the back defending from outside the penalty area as well, which was a bit of a surprise. But he does fantastically well, bringing the ball down, beating the first player and getting into that dangerous position. And I'm not sure if the ball took a little bit of a nick, but seeing it fly into that top corner and then his celebrations with everybody else, it was just, fantastic goal. And he nearly did a carbon copy of a goal he scored against Burnley last season, but with Wissa, when Maupay laid it off for him and he puts it in the far corner. And Wissa done it this was in the second half, jumping forward to the second half. And he almost done it then again, but he was lively, he was dangerous, and he was back to what we kind of saw at the start of the season. And it was really, really refreshing.
Yeah. And something that Alan Shearer said is that about Newcastle is that they've got a lot of good players, but the very good players are the ones that perform 9 weeks out of 10, and the good players are the one that perform 6 weeks out of 10 or 7 weeks out of 10. And we've spoken about Bryan in terms of consistency maybe being his biggest problem, but when he is like that, he's untouchable. Like, my favorite part about that goal is, yes, he brings it under a spell well, and he always does that. If like Bryan and Mbeumo, if a ball gets lofted to him or if it comes into him at pace, he's just fantastic at ball retention, and especially if he's got players close to him, he'll always manage to kind of touch the ball away so that he gives himself a bit of space or drive into the box, even if the ball comes in at pace. My favorite bit about that goal, though, is he gets beyond Hall with the cut in, and then Joe Linton sort of backing up into him, and he gets past Joe Linton just with a touch to give himself a little bit of space in the box, and then he just executes the finish. But what a player when he's on his day. And obviously we get pegged back straight away. We always knew that there was going to be goals. But then again, Dan, Wissa, those two, when they get into the box this season, they're just, like you mentioned at the top, they're just turning into incredible finishers. But particularly Wissa, when he's in and around the box, you know that he's probably going to get it on target, and 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, he's going to hit the back of the net. And it was just another incredible finish.
And that's why he has to be down the middle, even with Thiago in the team. I know Harvey Barnes gifted in the ball, and the Newcastle defenders backed off, which is something that we're quite prone to doing a lot of the time as well. And like we usually are quite happy to let the opposition have shots on range, knowing that it's got to be a really good finish to go in, and that's exactly what Wissa did. And it doesn't surprise me. And he scores all types of goals. We've seen him score that type of goal before. I think Luton away last season, he scored similar sort of goal from outside the box. He's also there for the tap-ins. He's always in the right place, the right time. When he's through one-on-one as well, you'll back him in that kind of finish. So he's so invaluable, and he has got to be now, probably our best signing since we've come up to the Premier League for overall end product in the 3 seasons, because he's always scored goals. And we're just seeing him doing it on a more regular basis. Now he's starting regularly and starting up front. And, his minutes per goal has got to be up there with the very best, because he's missed a few games this season and he's already on 9.
Yeah, I think it is the best in the league. Someone fact checked me on the comments in that, but I'm pretty sure he's up there, if not the best in the league. And another thing as well that dawned on me the other day, we signed him as a winger. It's just a Thomas Frank thing when he gets hold of players. He just wants to convert them into strikers. And now he's like, I've seen some of the podcasts and stuff that I watch on YouTube, they're all putting Wissa in their like top 10 strikers in the Prem. It's like we didn't even sign him as a striker. We signed him as a winger, which is just, again, more proof of the fact that Thomas Frank just gets the best out of attacking players. He really, really does. Craig, pegged back again, and we mentioned at the top of the show that we were probably quite lucky to go into the second half at 2-2, considering the amazing save from Flecken. I'm going to call it amazing save from Flecken, but dithering from Isak, because he should definitely hit it on his left foot when he gets past Flecken. And there was also a chance for Jacob Murphy in the first half when he kind of just mistimes his header and ends up going over the bar. But whatever Thomas Frank said at half time, Craig, I don't want to say it was a completely different game, but in terms of us going forward, we looked a lot more potent and we looked a lot more sharp at the back. And we started to see especially what an attacking trio of Bryan, Wissa and Thiago can do in terms of breaking at pace. And just a word on Thiago as well. How did you feel about his performance on Saturday? Because I thought he was a handful from start to finish, and he was great at linking the play.
I'm actually going to go back a little bit at the start of what you just said there with the Isak chance. Well, I want to give a lot of credit to Ethan Pinnock. We've given him a bit of criticism this season. He hasn't maybe been at the standard that we've seen from him, but his defending for that goal, he did exactly the right thing. If he'd have ran towards Isak then has to make a snapshot decision and get the ball away. He covers the space, which means he has to then make a decision in what to do. And he did, as like you said, on the ball, and it gives Flecken an opportunity to get back in and get a hand in. And I don't think I've heard a reaction like that to a save or to an incident like that with the goalkeeper since we played Man City last season, and he was just saving everything. But I just want to give credit to Ethan Pinnock's defensive work in that situation as well, because after we've given him a bit of criticism in recent pods, he deserves it when he plays well as well. Thiago, yeah, I don't know what was said at halftime, but it was, I said it to a few people, probably the best defensive performance we've had in a half of football as well as going forwards, and to the point that our defender scored the third goal, which we would talk about. But Thiago's just busy, man. He's busy all the time, and I love it. His work rate, the way he will press players, he'll press defenders, he'll press the goalie. He's a big, big player, physically and within the team. I think people around me were saying he's going to be better than Ivan Toney, so we'll see how that goes. But
different players,
they are different players.
Very
different players.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's so busy, and it's what we actually need from a striker, someone who with a big presence that he has, that's willing to run. And for a big guy, shit me, man, he's well fast. He is so fast. Like seeing him running across the pitch, I would not want him running towards me. I tell you, yeah. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. And the only thing that was missing from that Thiago performance, I think we'll all agree, was a goal. The only thing that was missing was from a goal. But I can't remember him actually having a clear-cut chance. but he was creating so many for those around him, for Wissa around him, for Bryan around him, for I think KLP had a chance as well, if I remember correctly from one of his knockdowns and things like that, or it might have been Fab. But he's so busy that he occupies two defenders, which is exactly what we were saying when Ivan Toney came back from his ban last season. He is so busy that he occupies two defenders, which frees up an untold amount of space for Wissa, for Bryan, for KLP, for Fab, for Schade when he comes on. He just creates so much space because of the players that he occupies, and the defenders have to occupy him. And that showed with the third goal, which is a great segue for you, Mike.
Thank you. The third goal. I mean, Collins took it like a striker, but obviously the ball was intended for Thiago, and he makes himself a problem in the box, which makes it hard for. I think it might have been Dan Burn that was on him trying to defend it, but
it's Fabian Schade
who's trying to defend it. But even Collins takes the goal like a striker first of all to get that little deft touch. It was weird watching that from the West Ham because it just never looked like it just trickled in so slowly, but somehow just went into the back of the net. But to bring it back to Thiago, I don't know if either of you guys clocked his celebrations in the corner, but he went fucking mental when we scored that goal.
He did against Leicester as well. I don't know if you remember for Schade's fourth goal. Yeah. Schade jumps on him, and then Thiago just grabs a hold of Wissa and starts shaking him. Yeah, he loves it, didn't he?
Yeah. He's replacing the Godos slap. He started slapping people as well.
Yeah, no, but we like. I think we kind of not that Ivan Toney didn't. He's definitely very much a different type of striker in kind of all aspects. You wouldn't get that kind of celebration from Ivan Toney, I don't think. And also they're so different. Like you're right, Craig. He runs around a lot. He probably looks to come deep and build things a bit more and kind of spin off centre backs and bring Wissa and Bryan into play, which I'm not saying Ivan Toney didn't do, but Thiago is definitely a lot quicker with his kind of approach and maybe getting rid of the ball a bit faster than Ivan Toney would. In terms of, Ivan Toney would like to draw a lot of fouls and get us a bit higher up the pitch in that sense. But it was a really good performance from him. We'll talk about the fourth goal. Again, another weird one to watch because it looks, for all the life of me, like Livramento is going to get across and make a tackle, and then he just doesn't. He just slips at the wrong moment. And Kevin Schade nips in for the fourth, this time off the bench, Dan, and that was needed from him after, I don't want to say stinker, but I've got stinker in the running order, but it wasn't, we kind of expected him to kick on after the kick on. That was a Callum quote there. Wanted to kick on after the...
Before we talk about that goal, Dan, can we talk about the Wissa chance right at the start of the half and how that didn't go in?
Yeah, that was a weird one because I don't even know what he goes for because he kind of hits it straight at the defender. It takes a deflection, and it's actually a really good save by Pope to knock it onto the post. But he had Fabio, who stopped his run, who he probably should have played it to. He had Thiago, who went sort of towards the back post or the front post.
And Keane was on the edge of the 6-yard box.
Yeah, no, it was a really weird one. But that's what I mean. That was early on in the second half. So you could see that our intensity had kind of changed so fast. And then we get the third, and then it was like similar to how we talked about Bournemouth, Dan, in terms of is the goal coming? We thought it might be coming against Bournemouth, but I didn't really think the equaliser was coming for Newcastle in that second half at any point before we got our fourth. Do you know what I mean?
There's a period I was a bit worried when we brought Ben Mee on again, and we made that same sub against Fulham with a few minutes left, and we all know how that went. So I think I just had a bit of PTSD from that, but the fourth goal obviously sealed it. It could have been, and it happens a lot with Brentford. If we hadn't got that fourth goal, the stoppage time could have been a bit sketchy, and it may have ended up being just Newcastle lobbing balls into the box. Obviously, they brought Trippier on as well, I assume, to do just that. And they had Callum Wilson and Isak up front together, so you could imagine how that last 5-10 minutes could have gone if we didn't score. But it was, I thought initially Schade's first touch again wasn't that great. I thought it was a bit far away from him, but really it got it the perfect distance away from the defenders, and just before Pope could get there. Maybe a slightly more agile keeper may have got there, but you've got to give it to him in terms of the finish again, though, because that's something we've criticised him on before. And again, it was a great dink finish just over the keeper who he knew was going to dive, and that's again the sort of chance that we would have seen him miss in the past. So it's nice to know that he is off the mark in terms of in front of goal, and that he is getting more confident with his finishing. I think the next step for him is just the consistency in performances. But we've got so many attacking players that we can afford that. Like even with Igor Thiago, he doesn't even really need to score at the moment, because as long as he's putting Wissa and Mbeumo in and making it easier for them, we're scoring for fun at the moment, and that's the excitement with all these forward players.
Yeah, the attacking depth is beautiful. I've got it in the running order. I'm going to say it's beautiful to see so many attackers that we can bring on, have on the pitch like at all times. It's amazing, and these are attackers that are coming into form or have been in form for a long time, or they're someone new that we're excited about seeing. So it is amazing to see all these attackers on the pitch and see how many we've got on the bench as well. Craig, let's talk about some players before we kind of wrap things up on Newcastle. We've spoken about Bryan, so let's park the Bryan chat, because I think we kind of did him justice. I thought he was the best player on the pitch on Saturday. The one that I want to talk about, and the one that Thomas Frank singled out in that infamous dressing room speech post match, was Yehor Yarmoluik, because that, particularly in the second half, was as cultured a central midfield performance as I've seen from a Brentford player in a long time, especially when you take into account the fact that you're playing against Guimaraes, who is considered as one of the best central midfielders in the league, Joe Linton, who's been a revelation in that new kind of central midfield role, and also I'm going to include Longstaff. It's just a big physical presence in that midfield for Newcastle, and he neutralized it to a T, I thought. For someone, and we've spoken about his strengths before, he's great on the ball, maybe doesn't have the legs that we quite need, but he takes his time, quite like Jensen a little bit in the way that he plays. But it was a fantastic performance from him, and it's so good to see, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. And he doesn't shy away from a challenge, things like that as well, which you do see some midfielders doing. But he's happy to put himself about. And I'm going to use the word that I used to describe Thiago. He's a busy midfielder as well. He's about constantly, wherever you kind of look, he's in that space. But before the game, we were saying in our chat, damn Schade for Yarmo, and that's a perfect team.
Yeah, we were.
Damn Schade for Yarmo, and that's the perfect team. But yeah, what a performance. If we had to single out a few players before the game, you'd have said, oh, maybe that's something that we might get taken advantage of because of maybe the inexperience that he has. But you wouldn't have guessed that after watching the game, that he is a young player. He is an inexperienced midfielder still. I mean, granted, he played a lot last season as well because of injuries, and this season he's got a few minutes in there. But I think that's his first full 90 minutes. You might have to correct me if I'm wrong.
Chat comments.
I think he came off with seconds to go for Mag Homer, didn't he? So does it count?
Oh, did he? Oh, that's his almost first full 90 minutes that he's played. And yeah, absolutely fantastic. And I think it's a sign of things to come for him as well. He'll be a very good player. He already is a very good player.
Yeah, but the thing we've spoken about it a little bit before. That the big video that they released on the YouTube channel. I think there's definitely the coaching staff at Brentford see him as maybe like one of the players that's going to go on to big things at the club, and maybe that was a kind of coming of age performance against Newcastle. The praise that he gave, the praise that Thomas Frank gave Yarmo in the dressing room after, was he singled him out, gave him the applause. And it was great to see. If you haven't listened to the High Performance podcast with Thomas Frank, I'm laughing as I say that, because it's a very acquired taste, the High Performance podcast, and I wouldn't listen to it regularly. But Thomas Frank is on there, and he talks about some of the young players, and it's a really good listen. Just from purely from Thomas Frank, not from the people asking the questions. But yeah, good to go and listen to that, because he talks about the culture of the club, and you can tell that Yarmo is part of that as well. Any other players that we wanted to mention? I thought we kind of semi-mentioned Fab at the start, Dan, but I thought he was very busy again. We're still kind of looking for that, maybe that kind of Yarmo-esque performance when he's the best player or best midfielder on the pitch. But again, I thought he's so good off the ball. I just think he's so great in the press, and he's you'd hate to play against him, I think.
Yeah, he was very lively, and there were a few moments where he was almost running at the defence with options either side in terms of playing forward, and perhaps the pass wasn't quite as precise as it needed to be. And you can imagine, and I think I'm only saying this because Damsgaard set high standards, and you can imagine maybe Damsgaard in those positions would pick out precisely the right pass with precisely the right weight, and then Wissa or Mbeumo, whoever it is, will have a shot in on goal. But no, he was busy, he was lively. I think he deserves more opportunities, as does Yarmo, and I think they both need to learn to be consistent, because obviously as good as Yarmoluik was, he has been a bit naive at points in the past, and maybe I don't doubt his technical ability, but maybe it's just knowing what to do when and where to be in terms of positioning and stuff. And I find sometimes maybe when we've got it in defence, he'll try and play out a bit too much when that's what you want to do ideally. But sometimes if the danger's all around you, instead of losing it on the edge of your box, you need to just be a bit clever with it. But they both did well. Everyone did well. And I think Carvalho, especially because he's realistically, he's a few years ahead of Yarmo in terms of his career development and his experience that he's had so far. So he does deserve more opportunities, and I think we will see him flourish if he gets them.
Any other players we wanted to mention, boys? I'm going to ask the perennial question on this podcast this year in a second. I kind of, but any other players?
Two more.
You want to mention? Go on.
I kind of just want to mention this as it was mentioned in the video that Thomas Frank did. Obviously, that was Ethan Pinnock's 200th game for Brentford, and it was probably his best game he's had for us this season. I would say. So very good to have that on a landmark like that. And obviously Norgaard's 100th Premier League game for us. And he even said after, didn't he, that he felt like it was one of his best matches that he's played. And I kind of agree. I kind of agree that this season, a lot of players have been a bit different, but luckily others have stepped up. Like we've had conversations about Pinnock. We've had conversations about Norgaard, and I've made statements about Norgaard and the captaincy and things like that. But I actually did feel like this was one of his best games that we've seen this season. You know, he missed because of injury, come straight back in and stepped up to the plate straight away. And I thought it was one of his best games this season.
Yeah, I think so.
For Bryan's goal as well. What a pass that was.
Yeah, he offers so much. We kind of saw what a Norgaardless team looks against a team like Villa with the way that they can break fast. And had he not been in the team on Saturday, it could have been a different story. Obviously, that's just hindsight talking, but he does offer a lot. Boys, I think I'm in a weird kind of state with Brentford this season, because we get a result like that on Saturday and we'll go to Chelsea and get spanked, and then we'll come back to the Gtech and we'll play a half decent team, and we'll be like, well, maybe we could do something, and then we'll go away again, and then we'll get spanked. And then are we just going to be in this constant state, Dan, of we look good at home, we look really good at home, but then we go away and we look pretty average? And I'm not sure if that's a kind of, a marker of where we're going to be this season in terms of being like staunchly mid-table. But a 4-2 result like that against Newcastle, who were in the Champions League not too long ago, it does kind of makes me think that there's more to come from this team away from home. And if we can start to kind of balance out the home and the away form, maybe we could do it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Tell me.
In terms of how we're trying to play, there's no marked difference away from home than there is at home. We still have a lot of one-on-ones. We still look to try and play out. I think the difference is we're not creating anywhere near the same amount of chances away from home that we can manage to do at home. And obviously finding the reason for that is very difficult. I know most teams tend to be slightly better at home, so that is a little bit of a factor, but I don't think it's as contrasting as it currently looks. I think partly is down to fixtures. Like I said, we play Arsenal, City and Liverpool back-to-back at the Gtech in January. So I suspect the home and away form will hopefully get closer together. And if you think the likes of Brentford going to Southampton, Ipswich, Wolves, Palace away, you'd hope we pick up some points out of those games too. So I think it will even itself out a bit. I think it's always good to be at home, and we want to continue that at home. I suppose in one way you can say if there's an away game that we feel at home at, it's at Stamford Bridge after the last few years, but I'm not sure we'll get the same result this time round.
Yeah, that's a good segue into that chat. Well, just back to you though, Craig. What do you reckon on sort of? We're going to have this conversation every week at this rate. Like we genuinely are, because we all said before the last one, well, it's going to be interesting to see how we do at Villa, and then we're 3-0 down in the first half. and then we come back to the Gtech, and it's a big win against Newcastle. What's going on, Craig? Tell me, please. I need some answers.
I don't think anybody has any answers, Mike. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I just want to say, we all went to Villa, and it was incredibly wank in the first half.
Incredibly wank.
In the first half. I can't think of a different way to describe it. It was awful. We was there. The away end was awful. Everything was awful. You guys did an episode without me just talking about it, and it wasn't great. But we weren't bad in the second. We won the second half.
Easier sometimes when you're 3-0 down, though, isn't it?
We won the second half, and we created enough chances in that second half to actually get. Okay, I'm never going to say get a point from 3-0 down, but cause them more problems, make them feel unsettled. Because if we'd have got us that second goal, that would have been an incredibly nervy Villa Park going in, especially knowing how they threw it away after being 2-0 up against us the season before. Now, that just turns to us then. As Dan said, we're creating chances. We're creating these one-on-one chances. It's just then down to the lads to put them away. Because if we're not putting them away, then we're going to leave ourselves susceptible to counter-attacks in the way in which we did so many times in that Villa game. And you could probably name a few goals away from home in which we've conceded goals from a quick counter. I mean, the Luis Diaz one in the Liverpool game springs to mind very quickly. I think the third goal against Villa, the Matty Cash goal, quick ball down that side, ball across, and then it's in the back of the net. There are several goals this season that we've conceded due to quick counter attacks because we don't change the way in which we play when we go away from home in the same way in which we have done last couple of seasons. It makes it enjoyable until we're 3-0 down. And then it's like, oh shit, man, now we got to try and get ourselves back into this. So there needs to be a difference in performances between the home and the away, because you can't necessarily play that same way all the time.
Yeah.
Point proven, it hasn't worked in 7 away games that we've had so far. 7 away games that we've had so far. The point in that is not really good enough. But again, you go to the first 4 away games, then you go to Villa Park, and you got Goodison Park, in which we don't ever really do fantastically well anyway. So if we was to look at the start of our season, at the first 7-8 away games, realistically, we're looking at that going, oh man, we might get a point. We might get a point somewhere. But then we come to Chelsea, and now it's an awful time, by the way. 7:00 on a Sunday. What an awful kickoff that is.
Yeah.
And then you come to Chelsea, and you want to go, we've won there the last 3 seasons. But then you go, Enzo Maresca's got them playing some fantastic football. They're scoring goals for fun in the same way that we're scoring goals for fun. This might be another 4-4 at Stamford Bridge, the way they had it with Man City. But it's so typically Brentford. So typically Brentford for us to not get 3 points away from home in any games until we come to the most informed team that we could possibly play away from home and go there and win 1-0 and really stink the place out. I would love it if that happened, by the way. We just go there and get a real shithouse 1-0 win.
You going full Kevin Keegan? I will love it.
I would love it. I would love it if we go there and we do them. But yeah, I think if we're fortunate enough, we could finish we could finish the weekend back in the top 6 again, couldn't we? I mean, I think we could go as high as 5th. It's crazy.
I'm getting excited.
Yeah, not getting. I'm taking over. Yeah, Europe's back on, boys.
Let's talk about Chelsea, Dan, because as Craig's mentioned, we're back at the Bridge, but this time in pretty unfamiliar circumstances. In this season, Chelsea looked pretty good, actually. If you watched them on Sunday, they tore Spurs apart pretty convincingly, despite what the scoreline suggested. Cole Palmer doing Cole Palmer things, one of the best players in the Premier League right now. They're second. They're probably, Arsenal faltered a little bit against Fulham at the weekend, but I think Arsenal and Chelsea probably look like the 2 teams that are kind of going to be closer to Liverpool in terms of the title race. How you feeling, Dan? How you feeling?
It's still a bit of a free hit, I think.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that thinks we can't. It's just not possible for us to win there every single year, and sooner or later, even if we win this time, sooner or later we will lose at Stamford Bridge. More likely than not. I think they have vulnerabilities as well. I think Sanchez in goal has quite often been criticised. If we can press him when he gets on the ball, if we can press their defenders, then we could get a bit of joy out of that. But going forward, they're scintillating. They've got so many options. They're playing on Thursday, but it's not going to affect them because it'll be a completely different side that plays on Thursday. I don't remember necessarily Cole Palmer having a real stormer against us in the past, but he's probably due one. He has a stormer very regularly. He's very cool and composed. He can really hurt us, and if he's on it, he'll be a real handful. And I wouldn't be surprised if we go back to a back five, which we haven't done in a while. Now Aya's back. He could play obviously at right wing back. Keno's Potter could stay at left wing back, and you could have Sepp, Pinnock, and Collins as the back three. So I wonder if Thomas Frank will consider going back to that, and whether that will mean that we are a bit more defensively solid, and we can grind something out, especially if we do still start someone like Thiago for the first time this season. We can play a back five, and we have an outlet going forward in terms of someone like Thiago.
Yeah, I think I've put the previous lineups for our 2-2 draw at home last season, which was the last time we played Chelsea. But you mentioned the sort of the way we could set up on Sunday, maybe in a 5, and you look at the game last season when we played them at the Bridge, and that was exactly what we did, and frustrated them the whole game and put in a really solid defensive shift and then come away with a 2-0 win. But Craig, just looking at the previous lineups, there is a lot of changes for both sides in terms of the last time we played Chelsea, and obviously the most obvious one is that they've changed manager as well. So
Yeah,
it looks like they're clicking this season. Obviously, there's a few in there that are still in there, but Gallagher's gone. Chilwell's obviously not involved anymore. Chalobah's gone, but the spine of the team, you could say, is more similar than it is different in terms of Disasi being there, Colwill, Fernandez, Caicedo, Jackson, Palmer, Gusto. They're all people that have featured a lot for Chelsea this season. But more for our lineup, I think our lineup's changed quite a bit. I don't expect Rasulev to be in the 11. Zanka is no longer at Brentford. Region's not here. Onyeka's not here. So it's going to be different. I think we can say that much. Are you seeing it as a free hit as well, maybe?
I'm not sure I want to say I'm seeing it as a free hit, because every Brentford fan now is optimistic whenever we go to Stamford Bridge, So then on the other side, the flip side of that coin is they're doing so well this season that you kind of feel silly not saying it's a free hit, don't you? You kind of feel, sorry, the bloody dog's just about to bark as well now. You kind of feel like it's not a free hit, and it is a free hit, and it's a really difficult one, because I want to say we're going to go there and do well and cause them problems, in which we absolutely could go there, do well, and cause them problems. And as I say, it would be so typically Brentford to get 1 point in 7 away games, go to Stamford Bridge, the most informed team, one of the most informed teams in the Premier League, and win, which would be funny, so funny, so funny. But if we're being realistic, lads, we know what's likely to come based on our away form and how well they've been doing this season. Let's just keep our goal difference in positive, and we'll be all right.
Yeah, that's very true. I think if we did win, it would add more fuel that's in Chelsea fans' heads, because it seems that they can't get us out of their heads in terms of, the Rory Jennings of the world. They're always tweeting about us, always saying things about Brentford, and you'd probably think that it's come as a consequence of us, our annual 3 points of the Bridge every year. So here's to that. Let's hope for that. I think that would be a good point to round off the podcast. The Eden Road podcast will be back after the Chelsea game with our full-time show. There's also going to be a video dropping this week on my channel. The link for that will be in the description, on Mikkel Damsgaard and his absolute sheer brilliance this season. I'm going to break it down into a few areas of his game that have really impressed me. That video will be live on my channel, so do go and check that out. Link for that in the description. Remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts about the Newcastle game. Who stood out? How should we set up against Chelsea? Will it be another 3 points at the bridge? Let us know in the comment section down below. And apologies for the lateness of this video. We had a couple of recording issues, a couple of timetable clashes, but we have got a bit more time until the Sunday game. So, you know, there's plenty of time to be watching this before the game on Sunday. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels. Give us a follow on the socials at the Ealing Road, on Twitter at Ealing Road Pod, on Instagram. Craig, Dan, Merry Christmas to you, Craig.
Up the bees.
Up the Christmas bees, Dan.
Up the bees.
Pleasure.